All right, so welcome again. All right, so Nancy Booker Memorial Lecture 2020. We decided in honour of World Mental Health Day, which was held on Saturday, that would focus on mental health this year. It's particularly relevant with all that's going on. I'd like to, we begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands on which we meet and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of the Indigenous library staff who help create collections which better represent our First Nations and make our libraries culturally safe places. Just another reminder to keep your microphone muted and your cameras off. I'm just going to introduce, just do a short introduction of our panelists. What's happening is we're going to have all our panelists start and then we're going to ask as many questions as we can at the end. We also have a lucky draw. Our committee member Claire will be pulling names out of a hat. We have 3 books to give away, 2 of Helena's book, How It Feels to Float, and 2 of Peter's books. I think it is, oh yes, 2 copies of The Elephant. So our first panelist is Helena Fox. She mentors young authors and runs workshops on mental health. Her award-winning debut novel, How It Feels to Float, came out in 2019. Our second panelist, Coralie Kouvelas, is the reading coordinator at Whittlesea branch at the Yarra Plenty Regional Library in Victoria. She is the program coordinator of the Strong Girls Club, which we'll be talking about tonight. And Peter Carnavas has been writing and illustrating books since 2008 when his first book, Jessica's Box, came out. He has since written many, many books and novels, including The Elephant and the Quiet Girl. So I'm going to throw it over to Helena, who will begin our talks tonight.
Unmute. Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm coming to you from Darawal country, and I'd like to thank the traditional custodians of this land for keeping and holding and sharing all the stories of country for the last 60,000 years and counting. So I'm really, really happy to be here tonight and look to the question of how can literature and how can we as authors, readers, mentors and curators of what young people read support and inspire good mental health in young people. So I'm going to approach this really wonderful question in a number of different ways, as an author, as a lifelong reader, as someone who has lived with mental health issues since childhood, as a mentor to young writers, and as a human being coexisting on this planet with vibrant and amazing young people. First, I'd like to talk briefly about my book, How It Feels to Float. So I found a copy and brought it upstairs, and how it became so closely focused on mental health. So I didn't start out writing a book about mental health or with the specific intention of addressing mental illness. I simply started writing. I wrote a whole bunch of these dreamy short fragments, and I kind of felt my way over time, almost unconsciously, into something that was like a story. And as I wrote, what appeared on the page was a girl called Biz. And Biz was 16 years old. She had these dark runaway thoughts, a beloved dad who had died when she was young, but who still appeared at the end of her bed, floating there to tell her stories of her childhood. And I discovered a girl with a beautiful, supportive family and a group of friends, but who also felt very far away a lot of the time and who was in real emotional pain. And as I got deeper into Biz's story, I realized how much of that pain I could personally relate to. Now, Biz's story is not mine, but I have experienced extreme grief and I have experienced complex childhood trauma. I live with many of the same mental health issues as Biz, and I also see the world in a very similar way. So very early on, I really connected with her. And at some point in writing this book, I discovered two things. One, I was writing a book about the ways grief and trauma can profoundly affect our mental health. And two, I realized I wanted to keep Biz safe. I wanted her to feel supported and loved. I wanted her to keep on, and I wanted to offer her hope. I wanted to write a story that was truthful and hard in the way that we're sometimes toppled. Just checking that I'm not. In the way that we're sometimes toppled by grief, trauma, and loss, and by our mental health issues. But I also wanted to write something truthful and hopeful, which is that we're loved, that we're worthy of love, that people are here to help us and hold a hand out to us, and that finding a path through something that seems impossible is in fact possible. So these intentions became cornerstones for me as I wrote my book. And I found that writing this book was an incredibly healing process, like I was holding a hand out to myself as I wrote it. So I offered myself this story of honesty and healing and hope, and then I offered it to my readers. And in doing so, I've received the most beautiful gifts in return. Letters and posts online saying how much this book has helped or meant to readers. I've received letters and notes where people have said, "How did you know? How did you put into words how I've been feeling all these years?" And that has meant the world to me, to connect with people like this. When young people see themselves on a page, when they feel they've been understood, the effect on their well-being is enormous. I know it has meant everything to me to find connection on the page, to feel seen, or to find a home inside a story. Books have carried me through so many difficult times. I swear they could be called life jackets sometimes. Books have offered me comfort and a place to escape. They've put into words what I was feeling. They have reflected my way of seeing the world, taught me new things, and helped me feel less alone. And I think sometimes we can all feel kind of odd in this world and sometimes kind of broken. And then these beautiful imaginary creatures come wandering into our lives and they say, "Hey, I'm here. I'll sit with you for a while, or maybe, for the rest of your life." And that's a beautiful kind of magic, isn't it? To receive love and care like that from the pages of a book. And there's a beautiful magic in the time that I get to spend with young people as their mentor. I've been mentoring young writers now for over 15 years, and this work has brought me immense joy and satisfaction. Young people come into every writing space with incredible opinions, humor and playfulness, a willingness to try new things, and with immense vulnerability and bravery. I have seen my students build a community together, explore their fears, play with words, grow in confidence, and find and express their truest selves. It has been and continues to be a huge honor to work with them. And because I thought this question was so important, how writing can inspire and support mental health in young people, I reached out to some of my senior students, many of whom I've been working with for years. They had a lot to say, and I'd like to share some of their thoughts with you now. First, my students spoke about literature that directly explores mental health. My longtime student and friend Reese said that stories about mental health issues give you, quote, "the language to understand what you're dealing with and how to use that language to interpret your own problems." Reese also said it's important to responsibly represent mental health issues because, quote, "that representation is going to influence how a young person interprets their own and others' mental health issues. And that's doubly important because the young people in question are at a critical point in the construction of their sense of reality, and that reality can be heavily influenced by what they consume," end quote. My student Lachlan said, quote, "It's important to me that mental health is normalized. You want people to be aware that not everyone is okay all the time, and that's okay." Jamila made a similar point. She said we need to use real terms when talking about mental health. Don't euphemize it. Let's talk about things like triggers and dissociation, about flashbacks and compulsions, and quote, "Don't shy away from the reality that is mental illness." We must also, Jamila said, talk about the huge spectrum of mental health issues beyond depression and anxiety, because we need to have conversations about all of this and continue to reduce any stigmas. Gracie said it's important to talk about carers and support people and represent them in a nuanced, three-dimensional and compassionate way, because carers are often directly affected by their loved one's mental health, and their work is often vital in their loved one's path towards wellness. Nina said it's good to see stories that show support beyond family members, and she particularly loves the stories that avoid depicting any young person as a burden, simply for having mental health issues. My student Jerome said, "Don't use mental illness as a plot or narrative device. Don't fall into shallow emotional manipulation." And quote, "Mental illness should not be a shorthand for sympathy or worse, pity, if it's not situated amidst the context of an actual well-written character." It was clear from my students that stories need to feel real for them to resonate. They need to provide a genuine experience led by three-dimensional characters, avoiding tropes or cliches. Real stories, not like documentaries or reality TV, but real as in the result of genuinely paying attention. Because young people know when that hasn't happened. They know when they haven't been listened to. And as Max said, quote, "If it doesn't feel real, then young people are gonna notice and you're gonna get shat on." In general, young people's literature, when done with care and empathy, can help young people feel, as my student Paris said, held and understood and less alone. It can also give you the gift of learning about lives other than your own, of worlds beyond your own experiences and outside your own privilege. It can help young people and older people alike be more kind and understanding. And very importantly, literature can also provide entertainment and a place of comfort and distraction. It gives them, as Max said, a place to disappear into, a way of removing yourself for a while from, quote, "whatever unpleasantness exists in our current reality." And Lachlan agreed. He said, quote, "When I was a child, and still now, I relied on books as a way to keep me feeling good, to distract me from any fear, uncertainty, depression, or anxiety that might be concerning me." And it's beautiful, really beautiful, for me to think of my students, these friends and fellow writers, walking into books to find what they need: recognition, release, adventure, comfort, joy, a place of healing, a place to learn about others, a space to cry, and a space of support. So how can we continue as a community to give young people this support? Well, most importantly, we need to listen and keep listening to what young people care about and what concerns them. And we must create and support literature that reflects that. We need to write and share vibrant and empathetic stories where young people can immerse themselves in worlds both familiar and unknown. We need to write, publish, and celebrate diverse stories. We need to write, publish, and celebrate inclusive stories. We need to ensure that young people of every identity and lived experience get to see themselves and feel heard and understood. And crucially, I think we need to offer young people hope, along with and inside stories of hardship, uncertainty, injustice, and heartbreak. We need to show young people being listened to, being respected, falling in love without punishment or judgment, having adventures, being playful, making mistakes, and being treated with kindness, being loved back. We need to show their whimsy and wonder and wildness and offer them pathways out of difficulty and show them ways to keep on. We need to tell and share stories where young people overcome, where they thrive, where they see and we see their agency, their strength, heart, compassion, and power to change the world, because they can change it for the better, and I know they will. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Helena. That was wonderful. If you have any questions, please continue to put them in the chat box and we will get started with Coralie.
Hi everybody. First of all, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of Kulin Nation where I am tonight, thanking the traditional owners of the land on which I meet today, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm just going to share my screen. So hello everybody, my name's Coralie Kouvelas. I'm actually a reading coordinator librarian at Whittlesea Library, which is part of Yarra Plenty Regional Libraries. And tonight I'm actually speaking about a new program that I've been running, which is Strong Girls Club. So what is Strong Girls Club? It's actually a specified club and a program to empower, to inform, to try to achieve or do achieve, build confidence, build friendships, connections and to connect, and to feel safe, and there's no gossip or negativity. So what inspired me to create the program? So Whittlesea Library is based in the Whittlesea Township, and that is quite a rural little township. And I actually had a group of young girls that would actually come into the library regularly. And I'd actually been given a library journal which highlighted a mover and shaker, Nancy Evans, who's head of YA at the New York Leverton Public Library Service. Now, within that actual library journal, it was mentioned about the group and specifically for girls and how we can assist in empowering them, making them feel at ease. And I did notice on this one particular, or one of the first times that I met the group, they were actually talking about some of the marketing that they were actually looking at through their magazines, on hairstyles, weight, all these different types of issues that they're actually dealing with on a daily basis. So I introduced myself to the group, and after reading about this journal, I just thought maybe we could have regular sessions in the library where we could offer some information, collections, and also introduce some of our local partners. For example, we have our Youth Services Division that offers support. We also have Plenty Valley Community Health, which specialises in women's health as well. But the major thing that the feedback I got was girl power. They really wanted, you know, to feel encouraged, and also positive, lots of feedback on wanting to know about positive relationships and what a positive relationship is. And I also wanted to offer mentoring through our local community or even our future leaders and how they could actually be involved in that and sharing that. So how does it work? It's a 1 hour session per fortnight. Sometimes if they are very passionate about something or really interested about something, it could be the following week. And it's also within branch operational hours. So Whittlesea Library is open on a Wednesday up until 8:30 at night. So I always make sure that by at least 10 past, 8:15 that we're finishing up. But the sessions can virtually begin from around 6 to 7 p.m. And the other major part of the session is the problem box or the information box. And this has been a great tool to use in my sessions, in that having that ability to, privately ask questions and pop them in a box before the sessions. They're actually just in an open area of the library, actually, as they're entering into the library, and they know that it's there and they can actually pop them in. So it could be a question, it could be some information that they're after. It could also be just something that they're interested in, that they would actually like a session to be about. So library staff facilitate and participate, but I am not a social worker, and neither is anybody else. So, and I make that really, really clear. I'm there to facilitate the session. I am not there in any way professionally other than a librarian. And the other big thing is that to keep these sessions are positive, and if there is any negativity at all, for example, if there's negativity or bullying or negative language, I facilitate that very quickly and change that up. So that's just one of the rules. There's no negativity at all, only finding solutions and being positive in the sessions. Nothing's off limits. So they talk about what they would like to talk about. So yes, some of the sessions do need to be in a private setting, and that's where that problem box comes in. Or if I can see that, you know, the session does require to be in a private space, we can definitely do that, especially if it's an issue. For example, if somebody has a health issue, we also have the ability to utilise that. So if we do have a professional person, they can go into the meeting room or into a private area of the library where they can have a private discussion with that person as well. The other thing, some of my group members are non-binary. So that's been amazing, because it has brought a whole wonderful discussion and learning capability within the sessions. And there's been some amazing friendships and boundaries that have been crossed. So -18, the Rainbow Youth Network has also been involved and really supportive of our program. And it's been a really positive thing to see some of those friendships and some of those relationships grow as time has gone on. So what's the feedback? The biggest feedback I get at Whittlesea, we're very, very lucky in that we have non-binary facilities, for example, toilets, showers, things like that, that they can actually utilise. And it was something they brought to my attention at first, in that they felt so comfortable, and so they just felt that that was a wonderful, wonderful thing. So such a small thing within our library was just so important to them. So having those gender-free facilities was incredibly important. The other thing with the friendships and connections, we had a lot of bullying situations. We had a lot of domestic violence situations that are happening at home. And so it was great having those partners that could come in and I could work with, who would regularly attend the session. And for example, the group really wanted to have discussions with regards to health and some of the health conditions that they were actually suffering from. So Plenty Valley Community Health actually had a fantastic session, and Northern Health, where we could sit down and go through all of those specifics that they wanted to have a chat about. And that was even privately after the session and during the session as well. The other major learning tool is just learning about relationships and what a positive relationship is. A lot of the attendees really wanted to learn more about that, and that it was okay to have an argument, or it was okay to feel bad, or it was okay to feel really weird and yucky. It's amazing the feedback that I've actually received So one of them was thank you to Whittlesea Library for the great place, friends and learning about what rainbow services are available. So this actual group has actually been involved in a lot of the rainbow events now that the City of Whittlesea run, and they've been finding it very empowering, assisting with being involved in their community, but also embracing everybody in our group. And it's been lovely to watch those relationships and actually get the proper support that they could need. Also, they've just mentioned, I mean, I personally didn't feel it, but they felt that in some ways it changed their life because they could dress, chat and say what they liked, and they didn't have to worry about mates at school or being out in just down on Church Street in the main street. And, you know, I had one particular member saying, well, you know, I feel really confident about myself, more confident about the township, and going out and facing those negative comments and how I can cope with that a lot better. So it's been really lovely to see the group grow. So the advice that I have, pardon me, to run the program is give it a go. Don't have any fear. It's been a wonderful experience for me personally. And as I said, I only facilitate the sessions. I'm not a professional in any way, but I also share my own experiences when I was growing up, and some of them are quite relevant, some of them are absolutely not. But I just found that sharing those experiences and stories has been very empowering for them and for me. So I'm always honest and positive and open, but very professional. It was really, really important that it was a professional relationship and not a private relationship. And it was great that I had my partners there, the professional partners, social workers, youth workers that could actually, and health providers that could come in and have those discussions with the group. They run the show. So I supply the area and the space, hot chocolate or chips or chockies or something, but sometimes they bring their own foods as well. But they run the show totally. And for example, our last session, which was way back in February, which is physically in the branch, we actually had a makeup session, but part of that was drag. So we were actually demonstrating drag, and that was an amazing session. We've also had craft sessions where they've wanted to learn more about brooch making or jewellery making. So we've actually had sessions on that as well. We've also had, as I mentioned, they wanted to know more about mental health support. So that's where Baseline and Headspace came in. We've also had Minus 18 come along to the session just to discuss what they have to offer and support networks that they can offer as well. So knowing your partners is really, really important, and knowing the community and what this group, really getting to know them, but knowing the partners that could actually assist them was very, very important. So it was connecting the people and the information to each other. The biggest thing is nothing is off topic. So that's why some parts of the session do need to be in a private space. And the biggest thing that I can, is we are not counsellors, we're librarians. So Strong Girls has brought great conversation to our family, and it has encouraged us to seek advice from professionals and even gain support for our family. So that was actually lovely to see. The parents at first were staying and in the background for the session, sitting and reading a magazine, or, but now they're also really empowered and confident that they can actually leave their children, the participant there, and pick them up after the session. So that's me, Coralie Kouvelas, all of my contact details, which I'm more than happy to share with everybody this evening. I'd just like to say to everybody that this was a great learning experience for me, and it was exceptionally rare. I didn't realise how rare it was up until Minus 18, and some of the youth services actually became involved in that, at least, out of, so for example, I can have at least 3 to 5 that are non-binary that are attending the session. And it's been just so empowering for us all to get to know one another and share those wonderful stories. Thank you, everybody, for having me.
Thank you so much, Coralie. That was really, really interesting. And as a former youth librarian, it's just like, yes, I'd love to get into that as well. So we'll go straight into our final panelist, Peter Carnavas.
Okay, thanks everybody. And thanks very much for having me. This is an honour to speak with the other two speakers tonight. I'd just like to acknowledge that the land that I'm on is traditional Gubbi Gubbi land, known to a lot of people as the Sunshine Coast, where it's raining tonight, which is just what we need. It's lovely. Now, it's quite interesting. I've only met Helena tonight, but we're going to cross themes a little bit. It's great to know that we're on the same page in some ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by talking about what I see as the relationship between authors and readers, and then dive a little bit more into the topic, the central topic tonight. So for me, as an author, books are all about interactions. And the first thing that happens is the idea. So this takes place as an interaction between me and my environment, a little pocket of the world in which I move about. And this interaction manifests as a response to my environment. And this is how ideas sprout for me. So, for example, I might take my dog for a walk and I'll spot a light on in a high window in an otherwise darkened house. Now I'll think about that window for a while and I'll wonder what fiction I could bring to that image. And I might build myself a narrative or at least a character with a backstory. And this kind of thing happens all the time, though it doesn't always lead to anything substantial. A few recent examples, I was flicking through some old photos of my parents and I came across this blurry black and white photo of my mum I'd never seen. She was about 20 and she was on the beach and she was holding a fish that she'd just caught. It was such a beautiful photo. And the joy of that photo got me thinking about how I might possibly capture that moment or just capture that feeling somewhere in a story one day. Another example, I was reading a book recently and I just came across this 4-word phrase, which was a square of skylight. And I just loved it. So I put the book down and grabbed my sketchbook and scribbled down those 4 words. And then I kept reading. But I kept thinking of that phrase and what I could do with it one day in a story. So that's the first interaction between an author and the world to build an idea. Then come the interactions involved in the writing between author and page, between the idea and everything else swimming in the author's head, and within the story itself. So interactions between the characters, between the protagonist and their own desires. So the whole process of writing a story is negotiating these relationships and the crossing of paths. But the most important interaction comes when the author's work is done and the book rests in the hands of a reader. The relationship between a reader and a story can be profound. When we read, we gain deep understandings of the world. We feel what it's like to be somebody else and we develop empathy. But we also find ourselves in these pages. And finding a like-minded character or a like-minded author channeled through a character's voice can be incredibly moving. It feels like the author has written the book just for us. I quote the author Kurt Vonnegut all the time, so much that I think people get sick of it. And when he was asked why he chose to write at all, that was his reason, so people don't feel alone. There have been a lot of people feeling alone this year, but there would have been even more despair if we didn't have books. And that's how I started thinking about this whole interaction idea. I read an article about families reading together. It was like an academic paper by authors Green, Lilly and Barrett, which I think you'll get a link to at some point. And this paper described reading as an interaction. And I thought the one thing that we've all craved this year is interactions. And if we can't have them with humans, then books are a way to fill that void. And it lifts the importance of literature even higher. And this brings us to children's books and how they can help young readers cope with tough times. There are so many beautiful books that can springboard a reading experience into discussion and contemplation and a kind of life lesson. So a classic such as Amy and Louie by Libby Gleason and Freya Blackwood can show us how to carry on when a best friend has moved to the other side of the world. Stephen Michael King's Henry and Amy tells us that even the perfect kids, the ones who do everything right, might have insecurities of their own. Herman and Rosie by Gus Gordon depicts the loneliness of a crowded city. Fly by Jess McGeechan reminds us that not everything can be fixed. And Michael Rosen's Sad Book is a confronting window into the author's grief after the death of his son. Now that's only 5 books out of the many thousands that can fashion a big idea into an arrangement of words and pictures that might help young readers. But while authors have an opportunity to help children in times of trouble, I don't think it's an author's main purpose, and it shouldn't be an expectation. The best thing an author can do is write the story they want to write. If that's a picture book about farting hippos, great. If it's a deep exploration of a family dealing with a tragedy, that's fine too. Both stories are completely valid as an artistic expression. And if one of them helps the reader cope with something in their life, and they both might, then that's a fulfilling interaction. But the moment that we authors regard ourselves as saviours, then I think we run the risk of being preachy or didactic, and that will lead to the greatest disappointment of all, a dull book. Now, I was confronted by this a little bit with my book, The Elephant. So it's a novel, it's a story of a girl called Olive, whose father carries a heavy sadness around, which Olive imagines as a big grey elephant. So clearly the father suffers from depression, and in many ways, the story tracks Olive's attempts to deal with this. But it's similar to what Helena was saying when she started her story. I wasn't trying to write a story that would help kids deal with their parents' mental health struggles. I was simply trying to write a story about a girl who brought joy to the people around her. Now, that's not to say that I didn't care about the dad. I found myself invested in his struggles, but it wasn't my starting point or the reason I wanted to write the book. But having said that, I was quite moved when the book resonated with people, both adults and children, as a means to talk about sadness. I've received loads of emails and messages over the past few years about how the book helped families go through something similar to Olive's father. And some of these messages even came from people who worked on the book with me. I didn't really know what they were going through in their own lives until they read the book and talked to me. And I wasn't really prepared for some of these messages, but it revealed to me the power that literature can have, often a bigger impact on readers than the author expects. Now, it sounds a bit strange, but I don't often think about children when I'm making my books. I know some authors have a very firm eye on their child readers when writing, but I gravitate to things that interest me first. So basically, I try to take a big idea and tell it in a way that most people understand, including children. And for me, this doesn't mean I'm dumbing anything down, as it's important to treat child readers with respect. There's an idea from the author George Saunders that I try to live by. Think generously of your reader and they will rise to the occasion. Children are bright, perceptive, sensitive, and are often capable of understanding more than we think. Children's authors should think generously of them, even if we're writing about farting hippos. This means that although I don't think it's the purpose of a children's author to help kids deal with things, we shouldn't shy away from deeper or challenging themes if that's the kind of story we want to write. So aside from the depression in the elephant, my picture books contain themes such as loss and healing, sadness, mindfulness, and the meaning of life. And when I read these stories to children in schools, they get it and they're happy to chat about these ideas. They often surprise me with interpretations that are deeper than even I've considered. And just in case you're wondering if I'm completely morbid, I've also written books about dinosaurs jumping out of lunchboxes, a boy and a bear fighting over a book, and a whale who thinks a shopping trolley is a bike. The unique thing about being a children's author is that you really do write for everyone, kids, parents, grandparents, and teachers. We call ourselves children's authors, but our books consistently cut across generations, and this affords them their greatest strength, which is this: they are designed to be shared and read together. When you read a book with a child, it brings you closer together, both physically and emotionally. Straight away, you're in the starting position to make connections, and that idea of interactions comes back. The child interacts with words, with pictures, with the adult reading the book, and then you're often racing, relating ideas in the book to your own lives and the world outside, and all of a sudden, quite naturally and organically, you've fired the imagination of that child, and they have the opportunity to use that reading experience the way we all do when we immerse ourselves in fiction. They open their eyes a little wider, they begin to interpret their own emotions, and they might even show early signs of empathy through pretend play. So it's not a huge leap to then use books as a way to help children when times get tough, a way to understand problems, and most of all, a way to feel less alone. Now, as a final reflection, this idea of children's books as a communal reading experience, it got me thinking about what adults might be missing out on. And there's a book called The Social Life of Books by Abigail Williams. Now, I'll confess straight away that I haven't read the book, but I have read a review of the book. And from what I've gathered, communal reading as a social pastime was huge in the 1800s when literature escaped the intellectual closet and was able to be accessed by the general public. And after thinking about all the benefits of reading children's books together, reading aloud, I thought that it's about time we revive the practice. So something different from book launches or festival events, and maybe a bit closer to traditional poetry readings. Just a bunch of people in a room, real or virtual, listening to somebody read, the same way we enjoy films or concerts. I think it would bring us closer together, we'd feel less alone, and we might even catch up to the emotional intelligence of children. And that's it from me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was great. All right, now we're going to rush into questions straight away while our committee member Claire is choosing our lucky prize drawer. But if we have all our panelists appear, I am going to pull up some questions. So I'll start with a question for Helena. All right. Helena, can you please share some thoughts about resilience as an author and as a mentor?
Ooh, okay. Well, resilience, let's see. I think resilience comes from, for me, it has come from practicing self-care as much as I can and as mindfully as I can, being very gentle with myself and very kind to myself, offering myself a lot of self-love. And I think there can never be enough self-love, like in that we should treasure who we are, treasure how much we matter. And then as a mentor, I think we can impart resilience by respecting other young writers, other young people, offer them a listening ear constantly, always let them know that you're in their corner. Know that whoever they are, however they present themselves, whatever stories they share, that they matter. And so then, and teach them that that they have incredible self-worth. And so, I don't know, you can model, I talk about my mental health, self-care. I talk about going to see my psychologist. I talk about going for walks. I talk about doodling as a way to get my thoughts to just be quiet. I talk about it quite openly. And so then my students know that they can be open as much as they're comfortable with in their journey towards wellness. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I model it.
Wonderful. That's really good. I'm
I
sorry.
could
I'm
say
just feeling
more,
really
but I know we
inspired.
only have. What's that?
I'm just feeling really inspired.
I want Helena to be my mentor.
Yeah. Oh, just another quick one for Helena. Kim loved the quote you said at the beginning with the books. If you could type it into the chat box or something, that would be
which one? I said so many wise things.
Oh, okay. Hang on. It said, it says the quote you said about books at the beginning. It's amazing.
Gosh,
And I want to print it.
Maybe about them being my life jackets.
Oh, yes.
I might pop them. I'll pop that in. Yes.
All right. So I'll go to Coralie. Here we go. Let's see. Beth says, this program sounds amazing. Do you feel that this group has changed the wider culture of the library at all?
Definitely. It's really brought home the stories and struggles that we all have, and brought that awareness even within the branch and externally outside the branch, and a better understanding for everybody as well. It's been quite empowering for everybody, really.
Oh, fantastic. And I'll just do another one for you, Coralie. Have you had any criticism from library people?
Not within YPRL. I've been extremely fortunate at Yarra Plenty Regional Libraries. Even our CEO, Jane Cowell, has been incredibly supportive, and everybody from the CEO down to library officers have just all embraced it. But I have, the school librarian was a little bit upset because the secondary college is right next door to the branch. So that's why we had the groups coming in. But even though they are next door, it doesn't mean that they're always coming into the branch either. It was something that I was actually quite shocked about, and it sort of took my breath away. But at the same token, a really good learning experience for not only me, for the group as well. Most definitely it was. But realistically, everybody I know within a public library service, and let's face it, the library land is a very little land, isn't it, as librarians? And everybody has just embraced it, has been so positive. And even that particular librarian, when actually heard what we were doing and what we were accomplishing, was actually quite apologetic and really has embraced it as well.
All right. Okay. Question for Peter. Chantal asked if you could provide the link to the article on families reading together. I think you're going to provide a list.
Yeah, I sent you an email, but I've also just put that link in the chat as well.
Excellent. All right. Alison made the comment, as a teacher and now teacher librarian, I worry that we can ruin a book by making too much of a teachable moment. I wish we had more time just to read a broad range of books and let them settle with the kids who need them most. I suppose that could be a question aimed at both Peter and Helena. What do you guys think of that comment?
I agree. I think we can pick apart books a bit too much sometimes, because, authors agonise over the work for quite a long time, but that's not necessarily the intended experience for the reader. We want them to have a smooth flowing narrative experience, and sometimes with kids, I think we can kind of stop and pull things out a little bit too much. So I agree with that statement, but using books to provide teachable moments is one of the best things you can do as well. So I think it's just a matter of balancing it, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely have heard my students talk about things being taught kind of into the ground, and I actually ended up writing like just a little bit of that into my book, this study of Sylvia Plath in the instance of my book, and just the way that my students would be like, we've just kind of learnt about it, to the point that the book has died on the vine for them. But certainly I don't think that's teachers' intention. I think they come into teaching a book with love for literature as much as authors have a love for literature. I think it's just interesting how the system can sometimes cause maybe a book to be analysed to death per se. But I don't know. I don't think it's the case for everybody. And I know sometimes in school, when I was at school, I would love, I had certain teachers who would just bring a book to life for me. And, you know, the essay question would be challenging and exciting to me. Or I remember reading Room with a View and then going to see the movie of it and just bouncing into my English classroom and going, we saw it, and having this wonderful discussion. So I think, like Peter said, you know, there can be really a balance of that. And I also, something I try to do when I'm working with my students is kind of balance out the teaching of a text with trying to tap in with the students' feeling about words. And so I might show a poem and then say, what colors do you see? Or how did that make you feel in your skin? Or like just kind of try and get into their emotional responses as much as their intellectual responses with a piece of writing. So just kind of to help continue conversations outside of maybe the more technical aspects of a piece of writing. So that's that from me.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Yeah. All right. I'm trying to get through all the questions. Okay, another one for Coralie. Okay. Apart from the outside organisations, did you find the girls use the library collections? Because managers always like stats.
I'm giggling at that because just to give you a broad overview, Whittlesea branch is the smallest branch at YPRL, and we're the most expensive. Statistically, the books going out is much more expensive than our bigger branches. So that's something that is a bit painful when we're looking at Whittlesea stats. But yeah, it did. It really actually, a lot of the girls were already keen readers. And using our e-resources extremely well. But it was lovely to see that I could actually bring some of that YA literature to them and any new stock. So I actually contacted our collections manager, who again was just phenomenally supportive in where we would say, well, what would you like, you know, and getting that feedback from them of what they want. I can't emphasize this enough, is that they just want to be heard, and it could be something, a book that we would have gone, or it could have been an e-resource that we were sort of scratching our head about, you know, and we were like, okay, we could potentially, even some of our makerspace, we had wood burning. They wanted a wood burning event, and we actually had wood burning available in our makerspace from another branch, who again, our support, I have a fantastic colleague at Thomastown branch, Tegan, who organised and sent that over, and we had that session. So it's really actually bumped up our collection, but given us other concepts and ideas within our collections. For example, even our public PCs, there could be resources and software that they're actually using that I would not have even thought about. So that's something else that I'm working with them on continually. But the biggest thing, the feedback the biggest, I think, the biggest statement I can make is that they felt the branch was safe. Okay. It was a safe place to go, that somebody was there with a smile. So I wanted to bring that to all of the branches. So we have a massive Mill Park branch that just happened to get a brand new cafe because it got all this upgrade, and they have booths. So I said, how about we go to Mill Park as well, that you feel the same way? And they were like, oh, okay, we can do that too. So they had another place, another safe place. And there's also amazing, amazing resources where just them feeling acknowledged and safe within the branch, and knowing that it didn't matter, that they could come in dressed as they liked, whatever, and they could actually come in and feel safe. That was the biggest thing, monumental thing, especially for my non-binary members, that they actually lack that feeling of safety, where they now have that within the community, which is absolutely brilliant.
Oh, fabulous. Oh, I just want to go to a library and start one now. All right, so it looks like that we're fast running out of time. So I'd like to thank you all again. You guys have been wonderful, so inspiring. If Claire, our committee member, if she has our lucky draw winners, she can type who it is and what they've won into the chat box. And so if you've attended, make sure that you check out the chat box to see if you you have a free book winging its way to you. Thank you again. It's been wonderful, and thank you for the committee putting this together. And if you guys have any more questions, don't like the attendees, if you have any more questions that you want to, or you want to actually get in touch with Peter, Coralie or Helena, and you can't remember their contact details, give ALIA training email, or I could put my own email in the bottom there, and you guys are welcome to ask. Oh, here we go. Oh, Coralie's put her contact details in the bottom there. Wonderful. Yes, recording. Yes, this is recording now, so you'll be able to awkwardly hear me again. Awkwardly introducing and thanking everybody. So anyway, thank you very much, everyone. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody. It's such a lovely evening and meeting everybody. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.